So I'm going to do something a little bit different here on this week's Ray Donovan video. And I figured doing that because I have the notes right here and just decided I needed my camera to take a break with it once in a while. So anywho, this week we have episode 7, If I Should Fall from Grace with God. At least it's not Shelley Duvall or Shabbos Goy or whatever they're talking about in the previous episodes. But anyways, let's just get this whole thing started. We continue off after Mick winds up getting stuffed into the trunk and run off with another mysterious character. He's driven into what I could call as a abandoned facility as Mick winds up getting out of the trunk and getting weapons and just returning back to think of a way to figure out where he can get Avi at. Meanwhile, back in New York, Terry winds up confessing to the confession boxes as he winds up talking about how he feels sorry for Abs and how maybe a possibility he may have given Abs cancer, or at least something of that line. It's complicated, especially odd for me, so onwards, Daryl winds up being told about Mick's script as he talks with Jay about making some modifications to it, which obviously will upset Mick, especially seeing as how he wants his script to stay the same, but they in turn want something different for the story. Ray returns to find Mick as he's talking to Ray about Bungie's situation, and of course he decides to call up Frank Barnes and talk with him about making a deal. Bungie winds up coming across the criminal who was at least one of the two that's responsible for the subway heist. At least I'm calling it Subway because I can't even remember what the name of that restaurant was, especially since it's been a while now. But he winds up coming across the criminal in the sub shop, and he tries to talk to him about where his money has gone, but unfortunately, he's not confessing to anything at all. Meanwhile, Ray winds up talking to Barnes about getting Bungie out of jail and putting Mickey there because, well, I think by this point we all know that Ray hates Mick's guts by this point. And of course by this mean is that if Avi is killed by the DEA, this could put the rest of the Donovan crew in jail. They'd be stuck there for life. But meanwhile, Daryl winds up telling Mick about how Four Leaf is going and how Mick hates the changes as he decides to get Daryl to drive him home. But as they're driving home, he winds up telling him about how Bungie is in jail because of what he was stuck with Avi and Bungie, as Bungie is stuck in jail, and of course Mick winds up tagging Daryl in to doing something with Frank. Ray winds up finding Avi in a cheap motel as he winds up getting at least some deal out of him, or at least he's thinking of some way around all of it, because he knows he doesn't want to see one person die. It's basically fake a death, and then they go underground, and their identities are never known again. So Ray winds up hiring a special effects artist to, fake Avi's death. And I gotta admit, the moments where he's just directing the death and whatnot with the effects, I just found it kind of funny. Normally, I don't know if effect directors are like this, but it's interesting to see if that's actually true or not. I'll need to have somebody look at that or something. Later on, Bungie winds up talking once again to the guy robbing the sub shop. As of course he talks a little bit about his partner, but he doesn't get pretty far with it, especially seeing as how the fact is he winds up having to deal with the limitations they have, especially for them being outside before the wardens have to bring them in. So Ray shows Frank the death of Avi in great detail, and surprisingly, Frank falls for it, especially seeing it's how a special effect. As Mick and Daryl wind up following Frank to the restaurant, as well as the call to a secluded location, in which he tells Mick to just be there alone. Which, obviously, we know by this point is where, the deal happens. Mick gets arrested, and all goes well for Bungie. So Bungie once again gets Dimebag to give away some information about his partner that winded up actually bringing him into prison. But unfortunately, Bungie gets out before he could get more information about it, as he winds up deciding to go into a bail bond facility and get Dimebag out for more information about where his money went. Ray winds up returning to Natalie, and she thanks him for all that he's done for her so far, as, of course, she winds up deciding to begin having sex. But, of course, in the process, Ray winds up deciding to get it onwards and continue with it way late into the evening. But Ray winds up receiving a call from Terry as he winds up having to meet him in the restaurant about what happened in New York and what he learned so far and how sorry he feels for Abby. All in the while, Mick winds up meeting with Frank as, in a twist, Daryl winds up killing him. As, of course, since my memory doesn't work much, he killed the head of the FBI. Yeah. So now they're all doomed, and they have to figure out, oh crap, how are we going to get through around this? We killed the head of the FBI. But anywho, Ray winds up arriving to the diner as Terry tells Ray about his trip and what Bridge has told him, and about his guilt for killing Abs, as Ray punches him and sighs in the process about all of this, especially seeing as how the love of his life was taken away from him. But anywho, that's this week's episode. I'm gonna throw the paper over here. This week's episode, if I should fall from grace with God. This is the turning point of the series right here. But it's also the point that we're finally now getting to. Is that what happened to Abs and how, or who was responsible for her death, or something like that. I mean, obviously there will be more flashbacks in the future episodes of this season, but Terry feeling sorry for killing Abs, that, I don't know whether or not that's Ray just feeling ticked off about how Terry killed her or something like that, or it's just Terry just spouting out nonsense as Ray shuts him up. It's a mystery. We'll continue onwards and see what happens. But anywho, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this episode. So, what will you expect will possibly happen next week. What we wind up seeing is how Ray wind up buying the restaurant. What will happen to Daryl, seeing as how he murdered the head of the FBI? Just what will happen in next week's episode? We'll have to find out, because Ray Donovan continues next week with all new episodes. And I'm spouting that nonsense right here. But anywho, I'll see you guys next week for an all new episode of Ray Donovan. But also, seeing as how we've got an all new episode of Friendship is Magic, also stay tuned for that. Oh, but also this week is the appearance of the all new episode of 4-episode Opinions. Because why not? But I'll see you guys for the all new material. And as always, I'm the Frobe Guy, and I'll see you guys for the next episode.